Hello and welcome to Evaluation Toolkit Part 3. My name is BC Echohoff and I'm a Communications Coordinator with the Native Connections TTA. On behalf of the Native Connections team and Contracting Officer Representatives, Maureen Madison and Jan Dunbar Cooper, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. In a few moments we'll start our presentation, but first I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available in the near future. Because we are recording, all phone lines will be muted to minimize outside noise. But please don't hesitate to use the chat box to ask questions throughout the session. Today's PowerPoint is available for download on the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Just left-click on the file and a Download File button will appear at the bottom of the box. Clicking that button will start the download. Facilitating today's session will be Native Connections Grantee Technical Assistant Shabri Perico and Subject Matter Expert Sarah Pearson. For today's audio, we have guidance that differs somewhat from our standard process. If you're dialed in and there's no phone icon by your name, you can merge these by clicking the lowercase I in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. On your keypad, enter *65* and the four-digit PIN number that appears there, followed by the pound sign. So again, that's *65* your four-digit PIN, followed by the pound sign. Each PIN is unique to each caller. Before we start today, though, our colleague Dave Braveheart is going to open us up in a good way. Dave?
Thank you, BC, and thank you to the awesome webinar team here for inviting me to do the opening. It is an honor, and I want to welcome each and every one of you. I'm going to open this up in a good way with a flute song.
Thank you, Dave, for that beautiful song and opening. Hi, everyone. This is Shabri Perico, and I am dialing in today from my little remote workspace in Seattle, Washington, with a very attentive and supportive dog at my feet today. I am a citizen of the Fort Sill Apache Tribe of Oklahoma, and I'm originally from Lawrence, Kansas. I have supported Native Connections Cohort 2 grantees as a grantee technical assistant for about a year now with the Native Connections PTA Center, and I'm excited to be with all of you today to continue exploring the Native Connections Evaluation Toolkit with Unit 3. Before we get started today, I would like to help you get a little bit comfortable using the chat function. So we'd like today to be an interactive and engaging session. So we want you to be able to enter your questions and any responses you have to the questions that we ask by using the chat box. So I would like for you to share with us today real quickly by using the chat box to enter your favorite activities that you like to do in the month of May. So Sarah and I, my colleague Sarah, who's co-facilitating the webinar today, we both have birthdays in May. So personally, my favorite activity in May is to celebrate my birthday with my family. So I'm excited to hear about yours, and I am excited to talk more about the toolkit with you today. So just take a few seconds and enter your responses into the chat box. And while you do that, I see, oh, thanks, happy birthday, thank you. Walking your dog, nature, and sunshine, I love to hear it. I love to see those coming in. Perfect. Fishing and family, thank you. Well, good. Well, Sarah, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you introduce yourself for a few seconds.
Thank you. I'm kayaking and planting and gardening. These are all wonderful things. Powwow season starts. It sure does. Looking for wild potatoes. Wow. Good. Okay, so we know that they can use the chat box. Hi, everyone. This is Sarah Pearson. I'm a Native Connections curriculum developer and Tribal Action Plan subject matter expert. And I serve the team of GTAs, your grantee technical assistants like Shabri. And as Shabri said, we want this to be an interactive discussion. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. And we invite your comments and questions either by chat box or by raising your hand or getting our attention by using the little icon. If you look at the top center of your screen, you'll see a little person icon with their hand raised. I would really appreciate it if you go up there and try to go ahead and raise your hand. And you can see that there's also a lower hand. You can raise and lower your hand for me. Great. Okay, so they can use the chat box and they can also raise their hand. And you'll also see under that pull-down menu, there's a green button for agree and a red button for disagree. So don't be afraid to let us know your opinions along the way. And I'm going to test the theory that they know how to use the little hand because I want to see a show of hands now. Oh, hey, Dorothy. Go ahead and lower your hand, Mary and Barbara and Dorothy and Tassa, because I'm going to ask a question for everyone, and I want you to show me by a show of hands. Do you know the difference between qualitative and quantitative evaluation? Do you know the difference between qualitative and quantitative evaluation? Let's see. Who knows? It's okay if you don't. We're just wondering. Oh gosh, look, they're all pros. I don't know, Shabri. This is great. Well, we know Natives have been doing evaluation for centuries, and today we revisit evaluation to understand the power it has to help us see cause and effect. I'm going to turn this back over to Shabri, knowing that you guys will be interactive with us today. Thank you so much.
Perfect. I can tell this is going to be a super engaged webinar.
Yeah, I think we have our hands full.
Calm down, everyone. All right. So as mentioned in earlier webinars, the Native Connections Evaluation Toolkit is guided by both the Native Connections approach and the American Indian Higher Education Consortium's Indigenous Evaluation Framework. The integration and connection between the Native Connections approach and AHEC framework within this toolkit aims to make evaluation more meaningful and relevant to Indigenous communities and your Native Connections projects. For many grantees, this toolkit may be the first time that you have been exposed to project evaluation. For other grantees, you may have a lot of experience with evaluation. So this toolkit is a new resource to help you moving forward, whatever your evaluation skills are. In Unit 3 of the Evaluation Toolkit, it follows this third step in the AHEC framework, as seen in the red quadrant, which is building the scaffolding. So today we're going to look at what evaluation methods and designs could be that are used to tell your program story and review some tools with you that can help capture the knowledge that you gain from what you're observing. So we encourage you to really hang in there with us, process the information, and revisit it after today. So before we begin, let's take a quick poll. And let's see if you can identify which examples listed are qualitative or quantitative data examples. So looking at this bulleted list and some examples that we provided, we're going to have you select if you feel that the example is qualitative or quantitative data observation. So let's look at this first one, which is an observation in the form of a sign-in sheet. So you're collecting information on a sign-in sheet to count how many youth attended a Native Connections event. Is this a qualitative or a quantitative observation? All right, so we see some responses coming in pretty quickly. Looks like about half of you, most of you have responded. So the jury is out, and I see that you feel like it's quantitative. And you're right, doing this type of observation can tell us how many people receive services. So this is a quantitative observation. We're counting the quantity. All right, so moving on, the next type of observation that we're going to look at is reviewing digital stories that are created by youth. Do you feel that this is a qualitative or a quantitative observation?
Wow, they really are responding quickly. This is a good group.
Right? Oh, there were some people that are like, boom, boom. They're kind of going back and forth a little bit. Oh, yeah, that was real quick. Okay. So there was like no deliberation. We just have 100% of folks that have responded so far is qualitative. So yeah, this type of observation can tell us about youth experiences and broader perspectives. It's a qualitative observation. So now we have one more that we wanted to get your opinion on. And this last type of observation we're going to ask you about is reviewing survey data from participants. Is this going to be a qualitative or a quantitative observation?
You know, Shabri, it's interesting how I'm only seeing about half of the participants responding. I hope we can get more to respond. That's an interesting outcome.
All right, so I see qualitative, some are kind of going back and forth. I'm like, some chat box responses, stats on data, quantitative interpretation, data, qualitative, okay. So I'm interested to see kind of where everyone's head's at. And we have a little bit in here that say it's survey responses are qualitative. But the majority, almost everyone is saying that survey responses from participants can be both qualitative and quantitative. So yeah, I think that it is both qualitative and quantitative. Most of you are correct that it can actually be both depending on the questions that you're asking the participants, right? So if your questions are open-ended, that is a qualitative survey response. And if they're closed-ended, those are quantitative. So when you review survey responses that are stories or narratives from participants, you're collecting qualitative information. And when you review survey responses that are for multiple choice questions or maybe demographic questions, those are quantitative. So great. So that was fun. Yay. So thanks everyone. That was just, a quick refresher from the first two webinars to jumpstart the rest of our time together today. Again, quantitative methods are based on numbers and mathematical calculations. Qualitative methods are based on written or spoken narratives, some stories that are heard, stories told, and even images. So thanks for, doing that quick interactive participation with us and typing into the chat box. So we'll move on to getting into the meat of today's webinar and really getting into Indigenous approaches to evaluation. And through the Native Connections approach, we honor Indigenous evaluation. And we have an understanding that multiple perspectives and viewpoints are very important, and all information is potentially useful. Some information will eventually drop out as closer examination takes place during data analysis, but in the beginning, all of this information is welcome. If you follow the Native Connections approach and the steps that are laid out in the evaluation toolkit, you'll be using what some call empowerment evaluation. And here are some key features of empowerment evaluation. It helps to create a constructive environment for evaluation. So for example, looking at what some challenges or problems, maybe weaknesses are, but also what resilience factors and strengths are. A second key feature of empowerment evaluation is that the voices of the community are actively included. And lastly, communities can use evaluation findings to strengthen community responses and make program improvements. Respecting and including individual and community knowledge throughout the evaluation process honors the people and strengthens the evaluation design. It empowers the community to work alongside you and with you, which validates the unique and lived experiences of everyone. An example of how your programs have captured this is in the Community Readiness Model Assessment. However, this is just a starting point and it can really be more fully explored. I'm going to pass it to Sarah now, who's going to review another Indigenous approach to evaluation that's covered in Unit 3.
Thanks, Shabri. It sounds like some people have a little bit of trouble hearing us. I hope that gets fixed soon. But we're going to jump into Appreciative Inquiry. It's one evaluation approach we're excited to tell you about is Appreciative Inquiry. This is an empowering, strengths-based type of evaluation covered in Unit 3. It was created in the 1980s by two professors at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, participants, show of hands. How many people have heard of Appreciative Inquiry? Let's see a show of hands. How many people have heard of it? Angela, Mary, Dave knows it. Amy. That's it. Wow, it's pretty obscure. Okay.
Yeah, five people.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's interesting to know. So this should be news to many people on this call. The premise of Appreciative Inquiry is that every human system has something that works right, things that give it life when it's vital. Appreciative Inquiry begins by identifying this positive core and connecting to it in ways that heighten energy, sharpen vision, and inspire action for change. Appreciative Inquiry is considered formative and process evaluation. It's formative and process evaluation because it is observation done as the program is in process of being implemented. So you use it to answer the question, how are we doing? This evaluation approach asks you to look at what the organization might be like if the best of what is happened more often. For example, youth participants would be gathered to talk about what they enjoy about the program, and they're asked to dream about or imagine what could be done to increase participation or reach new participants like older youth. And then they offer suggested changes to the program. Listening to their input, the program implements their suggested changes, observe these changes, and then measure the outcomes. Appreciative Inquiry directs us to ask questions that strengthen capacity and increase positive potential. I like that. Using this approach, we ask questions that bring out the best in people.
Sarah, I would love to hear about a few examples of where Appreciative Inquiry may work with communities.
Well, they say that it works where there is a fear or skepticism about evaluation. It works where a community or group of people have been affected by long-term trauma. It works where change needs to happen quickly. And it works when relationships among people or groups have deteriorated and there is a sense of hopelessness or disengagement. And I think I'm going to open up that document. We have a lot of file download documents for you guys over here in the right-hand corner. And we have an addendum to the Unit 3 called Appreciative Inquiry Worksheet. Let me see if I can pull that up. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this today, but I just wanted to let you know that this worksheet is in the unit in the back in the addendum of the toolkit. And it's a little worksheet to help walk you through some of the details of appreciative inquiry, which is really interesting. Gives you some exercises for planning, starting in a good way, discovery, dreaming, designing, destiny. A little bit more of this. Help make your SAP even more powerful. And then another example of youth group appreciative inquiry exercise. So just want to let you know.
Yeah, Sarah, I love that this this method and this approach, the process in this worksheet that was developed, they give a layout, an example of, or in the toolkit, we give an example and a layout of how you can use this process with different groups and how you can go from a strengths-based way to working with youth groups and going to what would you like to see, where do you want to go, how are you dreaming and thinking big about what can be.
I agree. BC is asking me to ask by a show of hands how many people can hear the audio. Could we see that really quickly? How many people can hear us? Lots of people can hear us. Thank you, guys. Okay. That helps. Appreciate that. I guess we have a problem with a couple of folks. Okay, I will go ahead and proceed, Shabri.
All right. Before we move on, Sarah, I think this might be a good time to just pause and ask for questions and see if we have anyone in the audience that has any questions about the content that we've covered so far.
Okay. I'd be interested to see how many people might look into appreciative inquiry to find out more about it because it sounds so interesting. So I'll go ahead and move forward. Is that okay with you, Shabri?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So the next slide is about exploring and observing. And as you develop your strategic action plan, you gathered data about community needs and strengths. You also gathered readiness data, and you used this data to help you choose program activities. As you implement the SAP, you'll continue to collect information on programming. Shifting into evaluation, the Evaluation Toolkit Unit 3 provides guidance on setting up a complementary evaluation plan of observation to track your program as it's running. Choosing an evaluation approach that fits will better help you explore and observe the experience of people engaged in and impacted by your Native Connections program. We're trying to get a handle on the unknown. So put yourself in the right frame of mind for evaluation by embracing a culture of inquiry. Never stop asking questions. Through observation, begin to tell your story of the program's impact. What do we hope to learn? What should be measured, like an increase in positive behaviors or a reduction in risky behaviors? What can we measure? How will this information be used? And given the data we've collected so far, what did we learn? And do we need to adjust the program in some way? We want to move the dial forward on improved behaviors and positive outcomes. We want to understand the knowledge gained through observation to see a connection of these improved outcomes to the program's goals and objectives. Are we making a difference? Why are we doing ribbon skirt classes? Why are we doing mentorship activities or educational booths or culture camps and community engagement events? How about those t-shirts? How do we know these things are working? And what did we learn? Or what did youth gain from all of our efforts? Evaluation, the act of observing, helps us make sure that we stay on track and move progressively forward with our goals and objectives. Doing this work helps you establish an environment for continuous improvement. Let's talk about quantitative data. They're like, oh no, not this again. There are many examples of information or data you could gain from observation that give you a sense of quantity. Think quantitative data. We have number and classification data that tell us how many older youth, for example, received your message or attended your events. Scores and ratings data tell us how well your activity was received. Examples include a youth satisfaction survey on how well they liked your Native Connections activities. Survey response data tell us if there was a knowledge change as a result of your programming, such as an increased awareness. An example includes how many respondents said that they know what to do if a friend has talked about suicide. Recruitment and retention rates data tell us if people come to your activities once on a whim and never come back, or if you have consistent participation. And completion and graduation rates data can tell us how many community members received suicide prevention trainings or how many youth completed your program. There's a tool within the toolkit to help you collect and track quantitative data. Please see the data spreadsheet attached as a supportive file on this webinar for more information. I just wanted to pause and see if there's any questions.
I think this could also be a great time for Mark to share his screen, and we can also pull up the tool that was developed as part of this toolkit in Unit 3, where we created a database of sorts to collect these different types of quantitative data. So Sarah just went through different kinds of quantitative data like number and classification data, scores and ratings data, and survey response data. And we have these tabs here at the bottom where this is a template that can be adapted for your program, and it can be downloaded at the bottom right hand of your screen. But this is simply just kind of a template for you to adapt on your own to fit the needs of your program, for you to collect information and enter different types of quantitative data, and can be used as a data system to hold all in one place, depending on the types of information you collect. And it could also keep you thinking about the types of information you want to collect. If you aren't collecting that yet, but you know that you want to, you can start thinking about the different types of quantitative data that you want to collect, and then how you're going to go about developing those things for the future. So yeah, we just wanted to pull this up pretty quickly and show you it on screen before we move on.
Yes, if nothing else, we have lots of files for you to download, lots of tools to use. Unit 3 is jam-packed, guys.
Lots of things to digest and think about.
Exactly. Give us a second to pull up. Okay. Well, numbers don't tell us everything, do they? Information can be captured by talking with people in the program, imagine that, or those connected to the program, and by collecting images and videos that document program-related experiences. This type of information is called qualitative data, and it describes experiences and relationships through words and images, which are very powerful. An example of qualitative data is a community readiness assessment interview with community members. Their words tell the story of their observations and their perspective. And I just wanted to call out to Barbara and Pam, who are on the webinar with us today. I'm very proud that they're here. Other examples of this type of qualitative observation are stories about relationships within and across programs. This includes stories about how partnerships and collaborations have been built, and this kind of information can be gathered at advisory board meetings. And digital stories created by youth that tell us of their cultural and healing experiences as a result of the Native Connections programming. Capturing facets of the Native Connections experience from youth or their families, even a couple of sentences that demonstrate a changed behavior, or lessons learned can convey valuable information qualitatively. So I'm going to turn this back over to my colleague, Shabri.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you covering both qualitative and quantitative data so thoroughly there, because it really sets me up to talk over this next slide pretty well so we can see how these two can best work together. Western and Indigenous evaluation practice use multiple vantage points that include collecting both quantitative and qualitative information. This is using a mixed methods evaluation approach. And according to AHEC, the best evaluations use mixed methods. So gaining knowledge through multiple perspectives helps to tell a more accurate and complete story. For example, calculating recruitment and retention, which is quantitative, is great. It's wonderful. But including recent survey results from participants about their participation, which is that qualitative piece, may help to provide important context as to why recruitment and retention rates may have increased or decreased. Gathering the information is step one. And once you gather it, the information then needs to be interpreted. And that's really to find that meaning in all of the information that you have. And a mixed methods approach will really help you connect those dots to tell a richer and more meaningful story. Most importantly,
we have a raised hand from Scott Barton. I don't know if we have a question from Scott.
Sure. Hi, Scott. I see Scott typing something in the chat box. Scott, while you type, I'm going to finish out this slide, and we'll pause it. That the cat likes the keyboard. We see that. Okay. Hi, chat.
Nice.
Well, hi, Scott. It's great to see you on the call, on the webinar. So mixed methods. Most importantly, using these mixed methods can also allow for cultural and historical context to be part of the process and make meaning of all of this, and help you make meaning of all of the information that you have. So before we move on, I just wanted to pause and ask for any questions. Perfect. All right, so here we're moving into an interactive piece where I would love to ask for you as the participants on the call, as I'm going through the content on this slide, I want you to really be thinking about how you've used any of these research designs or these evaluation designs in your Native Connections project work. So I'll be describing them, maybe some light bulbs will start to go off. So feel free to use the chat box to provide an example of an evaluation design that you've used in your Native Connections project work and what that looks like. And when I'm finished, we'll take a few minutes to discuss your responses. And also, feel free to raise your hand. If you feel like you want to comment, we may be able to unmute your line if we're getting fancy. Sarah and I are feeling like we can explore this a little bit and really try to get out there and get out of our comfort zone a little bit, and we may be able to unmute your line. So we may attempt that once I get through this slide, but for sure the chat box is available to you. So Mark has a chat function that he'll pull up on the side so that we have kind of a special one to enter your responses into next to the content of this slide. So in Unit 3 of the Evaluation Toolkit, it provides a description of 3 different evaluation designs. And those 3 different evaluation designs are experimental, quasi-experimental, and non-experimental. And each of these designs have benefits, and all of them will measure change. So I'm about to describe these 3 research designs evaluation designs, but as I do, I just want you to keep in mind that Native Connections grantees are primarily going to choose this non-experimental evaluation design. So we want to make it clear that there's no expectation of Native Connections grantees to choose a design other than non-experimental. So for the purpose of the toolkit and this webinar, it's important to have a basic understanding of each of the designs to make sure that you're informed and that you're selecting the design that's a best fit for your project. Experimental design is where two groups are equivalent to each other and one group will receive services and the other group doesn't, where the other group does not have services, and that's the comparison or control group. People in each group are randomly assigned from a common pool of people. And this design is really often used in medicine and biology, but it can be used in the social sciences, but it's often very resource and labor intensive. With quasi-experimental design, it looks a lot like experimental design, but it does not have that random assignment component. It also has one group that receives services and one group that doesn't. And those two groups are similar and comparable, but they're not equivalent. When we move on to non-experimental designs, this is where you collect information and you make comparisons. In this design, you do not have a comparison or control group. These groups already exist. It's usually very descriptive and correlational, where you describe the relationship between the program and those that receive services. So comparisons can be comparing groups within your community, say by gender, maybe by age, or by town. Or comparisons can be, for example, your community compared to maybe state level data. An example of a non-experimental design is making comparisons to see if your logic model predictions are working out. Another example could be pre- and post-test data. Pre- and post-test data could be maybe knowledge surveys before and after trainings that can measure change. Another example could be school attendance data taken before and after a cultural after-school program, and an attitude survey given to participants before and after a prevention activity. Another example of non-experimental design is simply qualitative research. So remember, Native Connections grantees primarily choose these non-experimental evaluation designs. But it's important to have an understanding of all evaluation designs and really make sure that your project selects the design that's right for you and that's based on what your project goals are. So that's a lot of information that I just handed to you, but I'd really like to take a few minutes and look at the responses in the chat box and see what kinds of interesting and awesome things that your communities are doing for evaluation and see how you're measuring and revealing change.
I think the vote is for non-experimental design. That's my vote.
That was a lot of information that I just gave out. So,
that was good.
All right. So I see that Leona up at over here responded in the chat box, and she says, thank you for providing information on this model. Oh, that was back about Appreciative Inquiry, actually. So she just wanted to say thank you, and she's going to explore that further. Kit with Lactus Lambo, which is the evaluator for Lactus Lambo, says that for them, an example of a non-experimental design would be the community readiness model. So they use the community readiness model to assess where they are currently in order to plan their approach and activities, but also to track any change or even a lack of change in dimension scores over time to know if they need to adjust their target audience or approaches. That's great. that's a perfect example of a non-experimental design. So a good example was that they had a really low leadership score, support score on their community readiness model assessment, and half the council came to the community readiness model workshop, and they said that the fact that the community thought that they weren't supportive was really hard for them to hear. But they were then able to engage council for their help. So that's really exciting. So thank you, Kit. I really appreciate that example that you provided for a non-experimental evaluation design. And hearing these practical examples for non-experimental evaluation that you're already doing in your communities really helps to kind of make those connections and tie everything together really nicely. All right, I see that Lisa Baird commented that non-experimental design is what their community uses. Angela commented that they have training evaluations and attendance, qualitative training feedback. So they collect feedback on trainings qualitatively, and key informant interviews. So that is also a qualitative evaluation. So they're collecting information, stories, feedback, and responses from training or individuals who are trained. They conduct focus groups. So that is also a non-experimental evaluation design. And they access regional youth survey data. Perfect. Thank you so much, Angela. And that's with the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation out of Connecticut. Sarah, would you like to share what Roberta has commented that their community?
I'm seeing Dorothy LeBron was saying that she uses almost always non-experimental design, formative process, outcome evaluation, and continuous quality improvement feedback. I like that. And I think there was some, Roberta, is it Moto? She says that she tracks how well people absorb knowledge, and follow-up was how people use their skills learned, with a portion of the surveys with people who didn't attend learning circles, who are connected to the people who did. I'm having a hard time reading it, to see if the learning circle participants distributed the knowledge. That's interesting. Yeah, a lot of people are sharing. This is very, very helpful. Leona Schick just shared something. Did you see that, Shabri? She said that
yes,
Native village of, I'm going to ruin this, Laklit has introduced and is following the community readiness model. Excellent. Not intentionally gathering data, but non-experimental design is the advisory committee encouraging youth representatives to formulate a youth culture club as youth voice. There is so much potential in other activities to study and gather data. Excellent. Thanks, Shabri.
Perfect. I appreciate it. I'll read one more example, and then we'll move on. But I really appreciate, keep them coming, and we can definitely talk a little bit more about this, or share these, share this information out at a later time too. Angela commented that an example of non-experimental design in their community would be collecting secondary data, including police, referral information, service data from partners. That's wonderful. That's a perfect example of a non-experimental design. So that is referral information, probably from clinics and other providers that are already collecting information, and then your project is then receiving that information and using it then to inform your services and the kinds of things that you're doing in your community for your Native Connections activities. So that's another perfect example of a non-experimental design. Great. Thank you so much. This is so exciting to see see how you've chosen to measure change and reveal change in your Native Connections projects. And a lot of times you're doing evaluation and you may not have kind of connected those dots or see that that's what you're already doing on a daily basis. And now we're just kind of, drawing those clear connections in a more, in a different way. So, all right. So each type of evaluation design has its strengths and its weaknesses, and your choice of methods has implications. So for example, how will the information be gathered? What kinds of claims can be made about the information? Evaluations that use mixed methods are generally more robust. So regardless of evaluation design that you choose, here are some guiding questions that your evaluation design should answer, and a program activity to see how well it's working. These questions that you should answer will be what will be evaluated when it comes to that activity. What will we use to judge program performance? What will we consider a success to be? What evidence will indicate our success? And what conclusions are justified based on the evidence? So let's apply these questions to two different programs. And the first is a program that's called Native Strong, and it's an example from page 9 in the Evaluation Toolkit Unit 3. So I don't have it available here, but you do have a copy of it in the Toolkit Unit 3, so feel free to follow along with that and think about how this example can be adapted for your program. So I'll talk through it with you. Native Strong is a program that will be evaluated, and it's focused on reducing depression, suicidal behaviors, and increasing individuals that are seeking help. So that's our first question. Our second question is, what will we use to judge program performance? Well, we decided to look to see if there is an increase in the number of people that are familiar with the program and its goals, and if there's an increase in the number of people who receive QPR and mental health first aid training. Also, we're going to judge program performance to see if there's a decrease in the number of suicidal behaviors like threats or attempts or completions. So what will we consider program success to be? Well, we chose to track indicators of success like after the first year of the program, 70% of people are going to know about the program and its goals. In the first year, the number of people trained in QPR and mental health first aid will increase by 20%. And by the end of the program's second year, suicidal behaviors will decrease by 20% as recorded by schools and by clinics. So what other evidence will indicate our program success? Well, we might consider things like administering a community survey that will demonstrate people's knowledge of our program. Maybe we'll do attendance sheets and completion certificates from the QPR and mental health first aid training. And that's going to tell us how many people received and completed the training. Also, we could compare clinic referral rates so we can show an increase or a decrease in referrals over time. So what conclusions are justified based on the evidence and information that's collected? Well, we're going to ask ourselves, are the changes that we see in behaviors related to suicide and help seeking due to our program efforts, or is it something else? Or if the evidence does not show a change in behavior, or maybe the change isn't significant, what do we need to change? For example, should Native Strong change what it's doing, or have we just not waited long enough to see results? Sarah, I'm going to hand it over to you so that you can walk us through another example in Unit 3 that applies to a different program.
Sure. Let's talk about the Drive Smart program, the drinking and driving program. Also, I know many of you have already a copy of the evaluation toolkit. If you don't, it's the first file in the file for download. I think it says NC-0Y3, which might not mean a lot to some people, but it means, I guess, option year 3. It should say EVA or evaluation. It's like 9 megabytes, pretty big document. So if you have a copy of that and you want to follow along, this example of the DriveSmart program is on page 8 of Unit 3 of the Toolkit. So think about how it could be adapted for your program. So what will be evaluated? Well, it's the DriveSmart program focused on reducing drunk driving through public education and intervention. What will we use to judge the program performance? Depending on our resources, let's say we decide we'll look to see if there is an increase in the number of community residents who are familiar with the program and its goals after our efforts. Or we can see if there's a decrease in the number of nighttime crashes as reported by local law enforcement. What will we consider success to be? Well, we'll track what we consider to be indicators of success, like the number of people who use the program's Safe Ride taxis may increase by, let's say, 20% in the first year, or the percentage of people convicted of drinking and driving will decrease by 20% by the end of the program's first year, as recorded by our partners in the local court system. What other evidence will indicate our success? We might consider things like the logs from the Safe Ride taxis that can tell us how many people used their services, or information on single car nighttime crashes that are gathered from police records. What conclusions are justified based on the evidence? Well, we could ask ourselves, are the changes we have seen in the level of drunk driving due to our efforts or something else? Or if no or insufficient change in behavior occurs, should we change or adjust our approach? I call this course corrections. Here we come to it. The so what question. What makes evaluation good or useful? And I want to queue up some of our volunteers and the respondents in the participant group, people like Kit and Dorothy, to think about sharing what you think about what makes evaluation good or useful. But I'll open up with that evaluation captures a wide range of perspectives and gives us a deeper understanding of why or why not a change is happening. And evaluation can help us assess skills development by program participants, such as the knowledge that they gain from our program or any trainings that they may have received. It can compare changes in behavior over time. It can help us decide where to allocate new resources. It can help us define and document the level of success in accomplishing our objectives. It can demonstrate that accountability requirements are fulfilled. And for all of you who like to make sure that our grantors are taken care of, that's a really important one in our progress reports. And evaluation uses information from multiple sources to predict the likely effects of similar activities of programs. Think sustainability planning. At this moment, I wanted to pause and ask for any of our participant volunteers to share what they believe makes evaluation useful and give us an example. I see that Kit Van Steel from Lac de Flambeau has offered, why do evaluation anyway? Exactly. Because we have to in order to meet SAMHSA requirements, right? But a more practical thing is to use what you learn to improve your program as you go along. Don't wait, I agree. Improve your activities on the fly, yes. At your events, ask participants what they would have done differently or what activities do they want to do next. That helps us adjust our SAP. That's exactly right. The SAP is a living document, so if you're always making adjustments, and it should be growing with you, at least monthly to quarterly. Okay, do we have any more responses? It helps provide direction, yes. Important for sustainability planning. Yeah, it helps leverage new funding support. It sure does. If you can show your funders that, or prospective funders that you know how to do evaluation, that's very helpful. Chanel Cook from St. Regis Mohawk Tribe says evaluation is always utilized without it being called evaluation. Oh, I like that. We host many community activities. After an event, we have a survey that asks about demographics, satisfaction of location, time, and more. Also, agree or disagree if the cultural activity was relatable to skill building. And I lost it. Shoot. Are we able to open any lines, Mark?
Sarah, I found Chanel's comment, so I'll keep going. So let's see. So for example, with skill building, for if it was relatable to skill building for suicide prevention. So if they, as the participant, would recommend this activity to another peer. For example, when they had a snowshoe workshop for college and university students, they asked the previous questions, but also what kinds of activities that they wanted to learn from. So they were able to relay that information to their committee groups and planning events and activities, and were able to assess whether or not they wanted to do those kinds of activities again, or if they should invite more programs to collaborate with them on those efforts. It also helped their partners hear the voice of the community. I love that. Thank you, Chanel, for sharing those pieces. Those are really important pieces of evaluation. Definitely collecting community responses to the program activities and services that you're providing.
I see a comment from Dorothy LeBron. She says it can be extremely helpful in showing stakeholders what's working and what needs help. And I like the idea of someone else said that it would be good to share what everyone's learning with other Native Connections programs. Do we have anything else at last minute? No? Gives us the information we need to increase knowledge about unique Native needs, assets, and work. Yes. Good. Okay, wonderful. Shall I proceed? I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I think there was one more comment that I liked. Kit mentioned that you know, it's really important to the federal funders like SAMHSA for Native Connections grantees to be able to describe what it is that the Native Connections projects do every year, annually, over time. But it is even more important for the projects and communities themselves to learn from what they're doing and to be able to feed that information back to their communities and be able to describe the impact that they're making to the people that they're serving and receiving services, right? So, you know, being able to say, hey, like this is what we're doing with and for our community, and it's making a difference. And you know, we work every day to better serve the people right along with you and for you. So I think that's really important, and I love that message. So I appreciate that comment.
Nice. All right. Well, you've made it to the just about the end of our webinar, and we'll close out with a couple more slides. The Evaluation Toolkit Unit 3 explains the elements of multiple evaluation methods. After you review the unit with your team, you'll be able to move forward with a sound, culturally relevant evaluation plan that follows your SAP closely. Before we meet again to discuss Unit 4, the final chapter of the toolkit, plan to meet with your Community Advisory Board to discuss what we've covered in this webinar. We have included the Appreciative Inquiry worksheet that we shared with you, and that's a great place to begin. Also, review the evaluation questions you developed from Unit 1 and work with them to choose the best evaluation design for your program's needs. A template and a sample evaluation plan is also attached here for you. In Unit 4, we will review highlights from Units 1 through 3 to offer guidance for implementing your evaluation plan and celebrating your results, the final step in a community-based empowerment evaluation. Get ready to tell your Native Connection stories, guys, and share your successes and lessons learned. Back to you, Shabri.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for joining us today. This was a lot of information plugged into our brief time together. So please review the document, review the tools, work with your GTA. They're super happy to assist you with these tools and resources and help you determine how to use them and even see if they are a fit for your project right now or potentially in the future. Just remember that we're all at different experience levels when it comes to evaluation, and your projects are all at different stages. So the Toolkit is a resource to help make evaluation more meaningful to you and your communities, and we really hope that it can assist you when you're creating your project evaluations. So we just want to open it up to you to see if there's any closing questions or comments before we sign off and close today.
You know, Shabri, I was wrong. Apparently the first file on the download is not the unit, it's the PowerPoint. Do we have the unit for download for people here?
Hey, Sarah,
Yeah,
this
I
is
was
B.
able.
Yep.
BC, go ahead, BC.
Thank you. The evaluation toolkit has been downloaded. We've also renamed it to make it clearer what it is. It's the last file in the grouping below. It's called Evaluation Toolkit Unit 3, and it's 7 megabytes large, so you'll know that that's your file. You just click on that link, and the upload file box will change to download, and hit download, and you'll get it on your own computer.
Thank you, BC. Sorry, guys, it is there. It's the last file on the download. Thank you.
And if you haven't visited or if you are aware, many of you know that the Native Connections Resource Center is available to you, and you can also find the Units 1, 2, and 3 uploaded onto the Native Connections Resource Center, and all of the tools that are related to each unit are on the Native Connections Resource Center for your download. And also just reach out to your GTA if you would like them to email you a copy as well. So with that, with that, we want to just close out in respect of everyone's time. And BC, are you able to do that for us today?
Yes, thank you, Shabri. So again, we thank everybody for joining us. When you join the next time, we'll see about adding your name and your phone number together so that maybe folks who have more that they'd like to say can actually speak through the microphone. But we do appreciate you being with us today. Also, keep in mind we will have our next session, which will be on part 4 of the evaluation toolkit on May 26th. Following that, we'll be going over the sustainability toolkit on June 16th and July 7th. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.